A very good morning, everyone. I am Anand Pratap Singh, along with Kamni Singh, are here to present our paper on integrating traditional wisdom of water resilience in architecture and urban design. About myself, I am assistant professor in Department of Architecture and Planning, Gautam Buddha University, and Kamni Singh is a PhD scholar in SPA Delhi. We both are architect and urban designer. The National Capital Region of Delhi, with 29 million people, is the second largest urban agglomeration in the world. The city every year during summer struggles with acute water shortage. Sadly, a large contribution of 45% of this water is lost due to leakage and spillage. To deal with this crippling water crisis, there is a need to create sensitivity towards the water as a resource. This paper aims to study water resilience in architecture and urban design and to mainstream the water element and bring it to the forefront by studying the traditional practice and techniques of water resource management in Indian context. The four river civilizations, the Indus Valley, the ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China, were along the fertile landmass along rivers. The availability of water in the abundance ensure food from agriculture and drinking. The reason for the fall of Indus Valley civilization is also linked to the water course, flooding or drought. Rivers are considered to be very sacred. It gives birth and a connection to the heaven. In many Hindu mythology, the origin of rivers are linked to gods. It's saying that God has brought down the river to the earth for the humanity. Other than these mythological facts, rivers provide year-round water supply and provide transport connections. The two very basic, very necessary factors for to start any kind of settlement. You can find many monuments and cities are aligned along these rivers. Also, also there are points along the rivers which are considered to be very sacred. It's saying that these points are aligned with the cosmos. So the cities of Ujjain and Allahabad attain its status of religious cities, while some cities took advantage of better connection better connection transportation through waterways. So the cities like Delhi, Patna, etc. converted into commercial cities. India has a moderate climate. It receives moderate rainfall, which is sufficient for providing water for its water bodies and its population, except for few parts of West India like Gujarat and Rajasthan. But due to intense and rapid urbanization and poor policies, many parts of India are water stressed. Especially talking about northern states, which are most populated and also account for 20 to 30% agricultural output, is water stressed. The situation is very alarming. In future, more part of India are projected to become water stressed. According to report, by 2030, 40% of the Indian population will have no access to potable water. Water in everyday life is an integral component of daily religious rituals and festivals. A Hindu will start his day with offering water to sun and tulsi plant. Or a Muslim will wash himself before morning namaz. They believe domestic needs, aesthetic values shapes the traditional architecture and design. The four major religions, Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, and Sikhism, have originated in India. It also constitutes about 20% of the total world population. All of these religion practices and rituals have evolved around worshipping nature, resources like water, sun, wind, earth, plant, mountain, and sacred stones. Water is related to life and death. It is considered to have a purifying and cleansing property. The humanity has survived and coexist in sync with nature through the ages. But in contemporary times, these resources are overexploited and polluted due to our ill practices. The ancient design principles were based on Vastupurusa Mandala. The most compact model represents the structure of the universe. Mandala as ground plan is been throughout used in Hindu, Jain and Buddhism architecture. and also has varied application from design cities to neighborhood to designing interiors. A diagram of 8 by 8 grid or 9 by 9 grids are drawn, and on each square deities are placed. In architecture and design, these deities are spatially related, and also the 8 directions are associated with natural elements like wind, water, fire, earth, and rain. A very good example can be seen from Jaipur city plan. This shows how our ancient design principles tried to consider nature and build cities and structure that are still relevant to us today. Water is considered to be a very important place for celebration and and to perform various kinds of ritual. During festival, people express their thanks and seek blessing from the forces of nature, mainly the sun and the river. The bank of river or ponds are ideal prayer location where devotional music or folk song reverberates in the air and purifies the whole atmosphere. A very good example is of Kumbh Mela, which is world largest religious gathering. On the most auspicious bathing days, the crowd can be seen from the satellite. Also, also the Chhat Puja and the Visarjan of the Ganesha. All these happens on the river banks. The so-called unplanned or the villages also have a sophisticated understanding of how to utilize natural resources. The use of topography where the most important core of the village is situated at the top, while the lower contours have pokhars, pond or the wetlands. The usage of natural slope made sure the availability of the water throughout the year. The use of these water bodies also varies according pokhar to pokhar. The pokhar which receive rainwater are used for fish farming. Pokhar which collect rainwater are used for drinking and other daily necessities. The mixing of wastewater, rainwater, and throwing of garbages are strictly prohibited. With this, I would like to call Kamni Singh to take.
Thank you, Anand. I'll be talking about architecture and design for water. We have seen that vernacular architecture and historic cities did have elements of water as integral to them. If we see forts and palaces of Rajasthan, we could see the value of water, how they have been used uh, mostly for cooling and bringing in nature to within the building. The three major technical aspects of water can be integrated in architecture are evaporation. We can have evaporative pool like it is in IHC. Water can absorb large amount of heat, excess heat from interior spaces and architecture spaces. Water can also be helpful for transporting heat out of the site by the movement. And water has an average cooling effect of 1 to 3 degrees, and that to an extent of 30 to 50 meters. This depends on the body and the distance up to which it can travel. There are variety of traditional water bodies, basically water structures which can be found across the country, varying from Bauli, Kund, Tanka, Johad, Bawri, Talab, Bhadra, Fad, Khul, Zing. So it is there in mountainous region, it is there in monsoon region, hot and dry climate, semi-arid zones and tropical zone. Each zone has different climatic characteristics, different issues related to water, and different methodologies of preserving water as a resource and using them in various aspects of everyday life. Apart from this, water bodies also have an important contribution for sustainable urban development. They can be important for economic production of fish and other livestock, also for transportation. Water bodies have a property of capturing and storing atmospheric carbon dioxide, so it helps in reducing the CO2 levels. Water can also reduce pollution to large extent. For example, wetlands can absorb act as filters. Water can be a very good way. Water bodies can help in flood control. They can attract variety of species and enable biodiversity in the region. Water bodies are excellent source of recreation. Of course, it is important for drinking, agriculture, and household use. And groundwater recharge is another major positive aspects of water bodies. But when we talk about contemporary urban development, we have been continuously neglecting the value of water body, and a very good example of a hazard caused due to neglect of water bodies is Chennai flood, which killed almost 325 people. It was a huge economic loss, and the key reason was lack of hydrological plan and ignorance at urban planning level. Uh, from 1980 to 2010, almost a 30 years of time, and the amount of wetlands reduced from 80% to 15% in Chennai. Most of the land was overtaken for development and proposal of large taken up for large urban masses, and all these water bodies were vanished, which caused huge floods. Although, and we are all aware that Chennai is a coastal area, so being so close to city and still struggling with flood is a major issue. uh, look back to our traditional town. Now here I am talking about a Islamic city of Shahjahanabad. We all know that Shahjahan's initial capital was at Fatehpur Sikri, and because of lack of water, he had to move his capital to first Agra and then to Delhi. So when he came to Delhi, he made sure that water is not an issue in his new capital of Shahjahanabad. We can see this is the old map dated 1850 of Shahjahanabad. Everything which is marked in blue is actually water. So it is almost all along the periphery of the city, and a moat around the fort. There are So this is how Shahjahanabad was planned originally. Now when we go there, we hardly see any trees or any water. We only see buildings and humans. So how can we incorporate water conservation, efficiency, and management in contemporary development? There are few approaches in the West and quite popular nowadays in India also. So one is called water sensitive urban design and planning, and second is sustainable urban drainage system. Uh, these are low impact developments, and they basically focuses on management of storm water in urban design and planning to ensure recycling by providing green roofs, permeable pavement. So we can see how we can apply this. uh, uh, so it can be applied in different densities. Like in low density areas, we can have wetlands and rainwater harvesting system and bioretention ponds, so large open areas can be left open. In medium densities, we can have a centralized rainwater harvesting collection pond and permeable pavements, rain gardens, and things like that. But in case of high density, when we don't have so much space for groundwater recharge, we can use the terraces and adaptable spaces, which are recreational space as well as space for groundwater. This can also be applied at different scales. So in city level scale, we can minimize the use of hard engineered surface, provide green areas for groundwater recharge, integrated water in the each and every aspect of landscape, provide infiltration spaces. In neighborhood level, again we need to reduce the impervious surfaces, provide porous pavements, provide buffers to prevent pollutants from reaching the water bodies, and water harvesting system at building level. At building level, there are green roofs, low E fixtures, xeriscape, use of native plantation, rain gardening, and of course rainwater harvesting system. Every city needs to integrate water resilience at three different levels. One, policy level, where we need to empower citizen and make sure that there is enough capacity building for the government officials, and also to integrate such regulations in urban development regulations for conservation and protection of low-lying areas. In urban planning, we need to look at examples like Singapore city, where there is a separate plan for water conservation, and at every level we need to integrate water conservation in planning process. In architecture and design, like NBC suggests, we need to use low flow fixtures, water harvesting system which is already mandatory in many cities, are well designed. This is to be ensured by the architects. We have to ensure that groundwater recharge potential wherever possible is integrated within the site. Recycling is integrated at the building level, and traditional building practices wherever possible are integrated in the design process. So, one question for you that we need to leave is, why are water structure in contemporary cities and the water supply systems are hidden from our everyday life? Why can't be they a visual asset, and so that we know the value of the structure in our everyday life? Thank you from Anant Pratap Singh and Kamini Singh.